right, well, welcome back to another edition of Inside BBI with John and Eric. I'm John McDevitt, and with me, as always, senior editor of Big Blue Interactive, Mr. Eric Kennedy. And Eric, game previews are a little different than we thought we would be doing. It's more, let's kind of get where the team is at and what we're hoping to see this weekend. But first off, welcome back after our last show, which is really a number of views. If you haven't seen it, please check it out. How you doing today, Eric?
Good, good. Just wish the Giants were doing better, which I'm sure we'll get into. But it's sort of their nightmare scenario was to start this 0-2, and that's where they find themselves. So whether they can dig themselves out of this or not, we'll see. It's too bad because you and I were talking about before we came on, the rest of the division has come back to the pack a little bit, and there's a door open here. But the problem is where do the Giants find their wins? So maybe
Right.
we'll get into that. But this is another. We keep saying it. This is another do or die game. We thought the Commanders game was a do or die game, and that obviously went the wrong way. So I've said all along, if they lose, if they go 0-3 going into that Thursday night game against Dallas, I wouldn't want to be in their shoes. So that's what they're facing right now.
Yeah, and it's a hard line for you and I. This is the other thing we were talking about is you don't want to be Pollyanna and you don't want to be the Grim Reaper. A realist can honestly see both sides of things. You can say, I know where we're at, but, and here's some other things. An optimist says, if these things could be, a pessimist will be like, nah, they won't be. But then there's the people that just want them to die. They want no wins. And then there's ones that think every game is going to be a win. So it's a fine line for you and I to do that because quite frankly, I don't think I want to do 17 weeks of coming on and going, we suck, and here's
Yeah,
why we suck.
yeah, I know.
So
That would be tough inaugural season for us.
exactly. So there were some positives from Washington. Um, Jones did play better within the confines of the offense that we put out there. Neighbors is certainly showing like he could be the guy. The drop was unfortunate, but when you target a guy 18 times and he gets 10 receptions, that's a catch he needs to make. There's no doubt about it. And he certainly feels that way. You've seen his reaction afterwards. I find him to be very mature, far more mature than I thought a diva wide receiver. All wide receivers who come out and drafted really high, you think they're going to be diva wide receivers. He's way more mature about certain things. He really seems to take a personal responsibility. It's just disappointing that he had such a good game and that's the way it went, but they had other opportunities.
Right. And we've talked about the defense being a primary culprit. And the other thing is, Singletary really had a really good game, and of course, but the fumble sort of takes away from that. So they should have won that game, but I don't want to sound like a Commanders fan because Commanders fans used to say that for years. Oh, we should have won that game. We got robbed. We killed, we did it to ourselves. You can say that about any loss, pretty much. Teams will always say, should have done this, and that's kind of where they were at. So the positives in the last game were some of the things that we thought might be positives this year was the play of the offensive line. Now that has to be taken into context that the Redskins. There I go.
That's okay.
The Commanders don't have a great. They have good defensive tackles, but they don't have great edge rushers. Brian Baldinger did a great review on the offensive line play and the run blocking, and it was really encouraging. And the fact
Right.
that this group didn't play together as a unit in the summer and in the preseason and already are starting to show signs of life is great. I mean, so that's something to hang your hat on. And we haven't talked about it enough, but other than the fumble, our running game was really impressive. I mean, it really
Right.
was. I mean, we were physical. We ran the ball at them. If the Commanders weren't running the ball down our throat, our memory from this game would be probably how we were running the ball down the Commanders' throat. It was
Right.
really impressive, and it wasn't like a cheap play here and there. It was consistent, positive yardage, and they looked like a functional unit. It's such a pleasure after all these years to see a functional offensive line. So that's something to hang our hat on. And then it keeps being discussed nonstop on the site as predictably as it should be, I guess, and everyone's up and down talking about Daniel Jones. So now Daniel's coming off a better week. And of course, both sides of that debate are now still arguing that. So we have to see what's going to happen against a very, very good Cleveland Browns defense. Daniel could regress terribly in this game The
Right.
offensive line may have more issues in this game, be going up against Garrett Miles and some of these defensive players that Cleveland has. So this is a real good test for them too. But there were some really, there were positives. The problem is the defense. The defense was just so disappointing that if they continue to play like that, I don't know what they're going to do.
And we're talking about, and I'll go back to the offense a little bit later because there's a couple things I want to talk about, but we're talking about a Washington team that's limited offensively.
Yeah.
They have a playmaker at quarterback, but he's a rookie quarterback. He's still learning stuff. The passing game was unbelievably simplistic. I can't remember the exact stat that I saw, but there was at least 10 passes were behind the line of scrimmage. A bulk of the rest of the passes were barely within 5 to 6 yards of the line of scrimmage. They were playing a very small bubble offense that the Giants should have been able to defend. The fact that we gave up so much rushing yardage to a team that we knew was that limited, and allowed some of those quick screen ones to just, the missed tackle, pick up 4 or 5, just enough to get that first down or get it close enough so they could run. The fact that we would go 3rd down, 4th down, and then give up the first down. It's like, at no point did we, and this is something I said in the previous episode, is that the defense is soft. At no point are we inflicting our will onto them. We are receiving things, we are reacting to things, but we're not forcing things. We got Burns and Thibodeau are getting a rush to a degree, but when you have a mobile quarterback, you still have to have integrity. You have to have outside contain. You've got to keep him from being able to just run around or past you. We gave that up a couple times. They said we used a spy. Who was the spy? Because Daniels consistently ran through the middle of the line when the rush went around him, and he got free.
Right.
Who was spying? And then overall, I'm really concerned with, I think we were so worried about the second cornerback position that we almost kind of forgot. We kept talking about it, but more like, geez, I don't know who it's going to be, and that person's going to have to fit in. The guy next to Lawrence has been nothing but a big empty space so far, and that really showed up in the Washington game.
Yeah, and that was disappointing. So the issue for this game is Washington's offensive line, as we talked about, has deteriorated a bit. So that wasn't a good line, but they ran roughshod over the Giants. Cleveland's offensive line is a strength of the team, and both their offensive tackles who are banged up practice today. Conklin came back in practice fully. The Wills came back and he was limited. But they're going to be this is. I mean, thank goodness Chubb's not playing and at full strength, or he's not playing this game. But a healthy Chubb behind that line against this defense after Robinson ran for 8 yards a carry against the Giants. So what I found interesting was they know they've got a problem. They talked about it. The players and the head coach talked about the run defense. They talked about the tackling problems. They talked about the run fits problem. They all talked about it. Even Dexter Lawrence was talking about it today. They were in full pads today on a Wednesday working on run defense. So they know they've got a problem. The big question here is, there was a really good post earlier on the site where, God, I wish I remember who they were quoting, but they were quoting somebody who said that August is now, September is the new August because no one's practices fully in the preseason and in training camp anymore, and defenses are way behind in the first month. And then when you get a new defensive coordinator like we do, that gets exacerbated. So the hope is, and this is, I don't know if this is pie in the sky stuff, this will settle down once the players get used to the new defense and the new coach and all that. But so every game right now, and we talked about this in the previous episodes, we're going to have to judge the defensive coordinator now because we don't know if he's the answer. So that's a problem because, as you said, it was very simplistic way the Commanders attacked us. It was very simplistic. I would think other teams moving forward are going to try the same thing since it worked. So they'll try to run the ball and they'll try the short passing game and see if the Giants can tackle, or they'll just give them free 5 yards and then a run after a catch thing. That's, I would test that especially if you got Deshaun Watson, who's not playing particularly well. I would come out with the same game plan and see if the Giants can stop it. So until they make teams stop, until they adjust, why would teams change their way?
Yeah, I think the one here comes the Pollyanna version. The one thing that works in our favor is we have 2 games under our belt with 2 different quarterbacks. Sam Darnold has a little bit of movability to him, but he's not running all over the field.
Right.
But he has a pretty good arm and he can throw down the field. So the Giants had to play defensively a little bit different, and you had Jefferson out at wide receiver. Then you played Washington, where you had a very athletic quarterback in a somewhat limited passing game. They don't really have a deep threat. McLaurin's their only main target. They kept everything short. So now we've played 2 completely different quarterbacks. Now you come in with Watson, who's kind of he's really an in between the 2 guys. He has a little bit of maneuverability, but he hasn't really used it a lot over the last couple of years. He has a good arm, but he's not always a great passer. He's regressed since all of his issues. I don't know. Maybe he's still massaging. Oh, that was bad. So anyway, maybe he's still working on some of those things. If ever there was a game now where our outside rush can rush, they can go in and come in outside. They don't have to worry so much about the outside contain. I don't have to worry about this guy's going to break free and could run 40, 50 yards down the field. We can really pin our ears back and come after him. Early downs are going to be super important. You can't let Ford and those guys get 7, 8 yards of rush. Cleveland's going to be without Njoku. He's not playing. So that kind of helps us there because we've not been good against tight ends. So
we'll make a star out of the backup.
Yeah, whoever that guy is, he's like first team all pro. Yeah. So, but this is the chance. And if we get, I think Musail got back to practicing. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correct. So he's practicing. So McFadden. Now we've got Musail. We've got Okereke. We've got some inside backers now that we can kind of feel a little more comfortable with. I think you got to play one of the bigger guys next to Lawrence. You can't play Chapman. You can't play him early. And Roach is, to me, I'm kind of thinking I'd rather take my shot with Davidson and Riley a little bit, just because I want them to be a little bit younger, because he's done nothing.
Right. Problem is kind of what Cy was talking about and others are talking about is we may not have an answer on the roster. So we'll have to see. It'll be interesting the next time Andre Patterson talks to the reporters. He's their defensive line coach, and he's pretty straightforward. So it'll be interesting to see what his take is on the players next to Dexter Lawrence and who's doing well and who's not. And it doesn't look like anyone's doing particularly well. But I will say this again, I've harped on that spot since the preseason. I've said defensive tackle is a problem for us. But the problems were so widespread on the defense with the missed tackles and missing, the gap integrity, and that's what the Giants have been talking all week. That Okereke came out this week and talked about he was trying to do too much. He's got to focus on his job and trust the other players to do their job and not try to cover for them. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. Are the players are can they turn this around? We don't know. So this is going to be an interesting game. So if we want to play this in the middle, like you said, we don't want to be too negative or we don't want to be too positive. Every game is a new piece of information for us. The first 2 pieces of information are not good. So here we go again. This is a new piece of information. If they go into Cleveland and play well and come out of that game with a win, we'll feel a little bit better about ourselves, depending especially what Dallas and the Eagles do and the Commanders do. We may feel a little bit better. So again, I wouldn't completely write this off. But again, the other big thing is Daniel. So how's the defense going to do against Cleveland? And Cleveland's not a high power offense right now, given the way they haven't showed it thus far. But when we make the other team go 12, the other quarterback goes 12 for 12 against us in both games or whatever it was, they got to be licking their chops. And then on the other side of the coin is Daniel's going to be going against a really, really good defense. And this is not Washington where he usually plays better. So we're going to have to see, can Daniel string 2 positive performances together? If he can't, we're going back to the way we felt after the Vikings game. So it's going to be up and down, up and down. The only thing I'll say to all the fans listening out there is this: don't react to the last game. React to trends. Look for the trends. How many games is the quarterback playing well versus how many games is he not playing well? How many games is the defense playing well versus not playing well? Look for the trends, look for improvement or regression. That's what we should be looking at. We in our society now, we always and the expert pundits do this all the time. They overreact to the last game played.
Sure.
So I did it too. Dallas looks great in the first game, and then the last Sunday they looked terrible. And
Right.
so now we do. So I do the same darn thing. That's why I don't know what we got in Dallas right now too.
So a couple things, more than a couple things. The first thing I'll say is the most interesting thing that could happen this weekend. And yes, I'm going to say it. I don't care. I'll get blasted for it, but it doesn't make it not true.
Where are you going with this?
This weekend could end, and at the end of the weekend, every one of the teams in the NFC East could be 1-2. Every single one of the teams. Dallas plays the Ravens. Philadelphia's playing New Orleans. Washington's playing Cincinnati. If the Giants beat Cleveland and those other three teams lose, and they very well could lose, the Ravens need a win badly, and they are a good team. They're not a bad team. Dallas just got blown away by New Orleans. They're going to have a hard time with the Ravens. Philadelphia has got to play New Orleans after Philadelphia just lost to Atlanta. They should have won that game by a lot. The fact that it was even close in their own stadium says they've regressed. They almost lost to Green Bay. Again,
where's the Cowboys game? Is that in Baltimore?
That's it. I believe it's in Dallas. But so was the New Orleans.
Right.
So the point is, I'm not saying that the Giants deserve to be in first place and the Giants are going to make the playoffs. The Giants are going to win.
They don't deserve to be in first
but that's the problem that we have is this concept that if we just lose, everything will be better at the end of the year. Everything will get changed. What makes you think that that's the answer, though? Maybe the answer is already, we know we need a couple of things, but that doesn't change the fact that we still want to win. And if everybody else comes back to the pack, now you've got a shot. If you can just right the ship and it really comes down to just, if you can cut down on killing yourself. Now, the one thing I'll go back to say about woulda, coulda, shoulda, the Washington game was lost before the kickoff even happened, because we were stupid enough to put a kicker who's 37 years old with a bad groin on the field with no other option. And I heard other people say, well, wait a second. He was good enough to kick off. He kicked it off 50 yards. You are assuming that the guy who was already injured would not have injured himself the rest of the game. The point is, you knew he was already injured. So we've seen this show, right? We saw this last year.
Yeah.
So you just bring a kicker and you go, I'm just dropping another guy here in case I need him. Just in case.
I saw comments on the site today that said we're making too much out of this. I don't think so at all. I think it was an unforced error, and I think there's a very good chance we win the game if the kicker isn't hurt. I really
and right there, what you just said. Sorry, I didn't mean to step on you. What you just said is the 100% truth of the matter. It's not about, well, they could have, but they didn't, but they had other chances. It's the fact that my guy is making these decisions. He's thinking this through and goes, you know what? We don't need a backup kicker for this.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he's injured, even though I had this happen to me last year. That's, like I said the other episode, that's arrogance. That's just arrogant. And it's not like we had to get rid of somebody to bring the kicker. We still had an extra spot on the roster. You didn't even have a full roster. Bring the damn kicker up. We don't need Ty Summers. I like. We didn't need Tom and Fox. Ty Summers has been really great on special teams.
Right. And remember what Connor said. That doesn't mean he's 100% right, but Connor was under the strong impression that Daboll knows his job is on the line. So if he's correct about that, the pressure is mounting on Daboll to not make mistakes like this. And again, it's kind of what other people have talked about: smart, tough, dependable. Well, that just wasn't smart. That was dumb. It was
right.
And I know that I think BC Eagles was the one who was making the comment, who I really respect a lot. But again, it's an unforced error. It was dumb, and I as soon as it happened. We talked about this in the last episode. I could feel it in my gut where this was going. It was just like, oh, you got to be kidding me. And then when we missed the extra point, I knew we'd be chasing points the rest of the day. And that's how it worked. We shouldn't talk about this too much more because we already did this in detail. But this is the kind of thing going into Cleveland that the defense is on the spot. Daniel Jones is on the spot. we're going to get a really good idea how much better this offensive line has gotten, because this is a tough test. But Brian Daboll and this coaching staff, including the defensive coordinator, is on the spot too. So
Absolutely.
the coaching's on the spot here. So the big question moving forward, and we'll be talking about this from here on to the end of the year, unless something dramatic happens, is, are Shane and Daboll tied at the hip? If one goes, do they both have to go, or are they both staying? I've heard mixed things on this. We heard Connor speak about this. He doesn't think they're necessarily tied. I've heard something similar today. We'll see. We'll see. But Daboll's on the hot seat, and you know what, you asked a great question. In a way, you know, sometimes it's silly to ask that kind of question, but I don't think it was in the case that you when you brought it up. What is the win total he has to reach in order to keep his job? Because I hate targets like that, and that's why coaches don't like answering that question about, you know, what do you consider a successful season, because people will get held to that. But it's a legitimate question, I think, given the situation Daboll finds himself in. If this is a 3-4 win team or worse, I don't see,
Huh.
so.
When John Mara uses the thing, we need to see improvement. That's what we need to see. We need to see improvement. Well, if you come in with a roster that's better than it was last year, which it is, I mean, we have more targets at wide receiver. We upgraded the offensive line. If you do that and you come in at 3 or 4 wins, you regressed. You didn't improve. That can't be good. And the other thing I will say, as far as the coaching piece goes, while Daboll won out last year in his head-to-head battle with Wink Martindale and ultimately got his way. Not saying he shouldn't have. Don't anybody read into that. I'm 100% fine with Wink moving on. I think he's one of the most overrated defensive coordinators we've ever had. But there was obviously something going on behind the scenes. You brought him in. You wanted him there.
Yeah.
But there was friction. Something happened. And it sounds like there's some things that Wink didn't like about Daboll. And now he's gone. And if you struggle this year, if things go backwards this year, at some point, the bullseye falls onto you.
And I think I think he knows that. I think that's what so how does he respond to that pressure? Remember, we talked about earlier in previous episodes, the pressure on Daniel, physical pressure, mental pressure, but the mental pressure is now going to be on Daboll. Is he making is he playing, you've alluded to this both on the site and in podcasts, is he playing it too safe? Is he afraid now? Is he coaching afraid? I don't know. I mean, that to me, that's always dangerous to get into that kind of thing. I think the offense actually performed pretty darn well against the Commanders. Especially had those 2 mistakes not happened, I think we might be talking about a different performance, because I think it looked like they were marching for more points on those 2 drives.
But do we invite? We want to keep this because preview. Yeah. It's kind of hard to spend a lot of time really going in depth when we all kind of feel like this game could go really ugly. There was a good point made that he says we've gone into like 12 personnel, or we've gone big personnel because we expected this. That's fear. Washington's not a good defense. What the hell were you worried about? This isn't the same as Brian Flores' defense with Minnesota in game 1. What are you worried about? So much so that you're not putting Hyatt's not getting on the field. You're not going 3 and we're running deep passes. You literally ran almost to the point of where it reminded me of 2002. After we had a bunch of injuries, we were running like single receiver routes with Toomer because we literally had David, I think it was David Tyree at the time. Maybe he wasn't even on the team at that point. I'm trying to remember who we had. We picked up Herman Moore. We were getting guys off the street to just be the other wide receiver. So you had Shockey and you had Toomer, and that was it for our wide receivers. And that's what it felt like in the Washington game. All of a sudden it was neighbors. Well, where's Slayton? Where's Wandell? Where is Hyatt to take the top off? But you can't do that when you're going 2 and 3 tight ends. And that's something we can get into, as a review once we see what happens this weekend. So real quick, I want to finish this up because we've got a different show we need to be doing. Real quick, what do you kind of see happening here this weekend?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to expect from this team. My gut says we're going to see more of the same. But if they don't win this game, like I said last week, where are the wins coming from?
Right.
So when this game real quick, because I know we have to be quick. When the schedule first came out, I didn't see a win here, but Cleveland hasn't been playing all that great. So you could see the Giants going in there and beating them. They got to win this. I think it's another must win for them, or I've talked about that Dallas game. So I'm going to say I'm going to try to use reverse and put the reverse jinx on them. I'm going to say they're going to lose. So maybe hopefully they'll win. So I'll say they lose.
All right. And I'm gonna go the opposite. I'm gonna go my angry runs, Kyle Brandt. I tagged you earlier. I'm gonna make sure this gets up on Twitter. I got my new sweatshirt, my angry run shirt in the back. I think the Giants are gonna play angry. I think we're gonna see Tibbs and Burns get to the quarterback. I don't like Watson. I don't like the way he's been playing lately. They literally just folded against Dallas. They could do nothing offensively against Dallas. And we saw New Orleans walk all over Dallas the following week. They beat Jacksonville, but Jacksonville can't get out of its own way. Talk about a mirror image. Trevor Lawrence, drafted way high, hasn't exactly lit the world on fire any better than Daniel Jones. Some of his stats are a little bit better, but their overall stats, their overall totals, not that different. And if I'm Jacksonville, I'm worried what I tie my wagon to here.
Well, the thing is, we're seeing quarterbacks left and right having very short leashes now. I mean, look what happened in Carolina. It's unbelievable.
Carolina, yeah, that's you can see that coming. So I'm gonna go Giants. I'm gonna say it's gonna be an angry run, Kyle Brandt. You need to come on our show, by the way, you and Peter. It's gonna be an angry run. Giants are gonna pull it out 23-21. I just think they're going to play really conservative, though. It's going to be mistakes by Cleveland.
You see them breaking the 20-point barrier, right?
I do, but I think
the sound barrier of the Giants.
It is, isn't it? Right? Like boom! I mean, there'll be celebrations everywhere.
Need an extra point? Nah,
babies will be held up and named after that day. No, it'll actually be a defensive turnover that ultimately does it. So with that, we'll end this here. That was my prediction. Got our 5 hot picks by the fit chick, Carly Ducote, who's going to follow. She's going to be right at the end of this. I'll put it up separately. But Eric, let's call it a good preview. Good luck to everybody on Sunday. Let's hope that the Giants are respectable, win or lose, that we at least see something that isn't eye gouging.
Embarrassing.
All right, folks. We'll catch you again later. Have a good night.